This is like Kennedy Space Center. We all put our headgear on and we're ready to roll. Tell me when we're ready. Glenn? Terrific. Welcome, everyone. The hour being 7 p.m. I'd like to call to order the City of Laconia City Council meeting for August 24th, 2020. Prior to conducting any business, I will read an introduction for electronic meetings. As mayor of the Laconia City Council, due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and in accordance with Governor Sununu's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All council members have the ability to communicate during this meeting through the Zoom platform, and the public has access to watch the live YouTube video at https://www.youtube.com/LaconiaNH. Listen to this meeting through dialing the following phone number 1-646-558-8656 or participate by the Zoom app. Webinar ID 853-2086-7359. Password is 417025. B, providing public notice of the meeting of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom, and instructions are provided on the City of Laconia's website at www.laconianh.gov. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 524-3877 extension 249 or email at cityclerk@laconianh.gov. And D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states his presence, also please state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Cheney,
Here and in the chamber.
Councillor Susie.
Here and all alone.
Thank you. Councillor Littman,
I'm home and alone.
Councillor Haynes,
Here and physically present.
Councillor Hamel,
At home and alone.
Councillor Felch,
At home and alone.
Mayor Hosmer.
Physically present in the council chambers. Thank you very much, councilors. Welcome. It's good to have you here. See your faces. Before we go any farther, I would like to call upon Councilor Cheney for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor Cheney. The staff in attendance tonight is our aforementioned city clerk, Cheryl Hebert, who is at council in the council chambers. City manager Scott Myers is in council chambers, as is finance director Glenn Smith, also assisting on the IT end of things this evening. Moving along on our agenda to 7, which is the acceptance of minutes from previous meetings. Minutes of the meeting, let me start that over. Regular meeting minutes of August 10th, 2020. Minutes of the meeting were distributed to the City Council on Thursday, August 13th, 2020 by City Clerk Cheryl Hebert with no corrections or changes submitted to the clerk. The minutes will be accepted as distributed. I would ask for a point of personal privilege here to move number 15 on your agenda, which is the mayor's report, up to 7B, perhaps, or anyway, we'll put it in as its own agenda item, but we'll put it in before consent and action items. I would like to do this because I'd like to share some information that the public may have become aware of or may become aware of this evening, and certainly afford the public an opportunity to make comments for items not on the agenda this evening. So I want to put it ahead of it in our schedule. Anyway, I think we really have two, what I would characterize two really very good pieces of information we'd like to share, certainly with the city. One we'll share right now, but then we'll bring up another one a little later on in the meeting tonight. But this is certainly our first opportunity to discuss this issue in public session. Pursuant to 91A RSA, New Hampshire RSA 91A3, Roman 2, parentheses D. The city council and the city manager have had ongoing discussions now for a few months. I don't know exactly when we started. It might have been at the end of 2019 or thereabouts, but things got waylaid there because of COVID-19, about the city acquiring some parcels of property here within the city. Right now, we'd like to discuss what was discussed in non-public session and let the city know officially that the city has entered into a purchase and sale contract for some parcels of land. But before we get that far, I'm wondering whether now might be an appropriate time as well to ask the city manager if going forward now, we can start to put together the record of all the non-public sessions that we had discussing this matter. And when you have them all put together, consider releasing them to the public.
I'll be happy to do that, Mr. Mayor. The process would be we will compile those. I will get them to all of you so you have an opportunity to review them. We will place it as an agenda item for your next regular meeting with the dates of the non-public sessions, and you will again be provided with copies of those minutes in advance to review. It does take a vote of the council to unseal the minutes, so you need to do it during a regular meeting after you've reviewed them. So any councilor individually can't speak to those minutes until the body as a whole chooses to release them. But we'll compile them, get them to you, and we'll have them on the agenda for the first meeting in September.
So would it be appropriate right now to consider a motion to unseal them, or would that be at the next meeting?
That would be at the next meeting. I think you want to, we'll compile all of the meetings because there were numerous ones because we were in negotiations. You certainly want to review them for content first before you just blanketly unseal them. So in generalities, you can speak to obviously the transactions and those types of things tonight, and we'll get you the specific minutes to unseal with a council vote for your next meeting.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Cheney.
If I might, if added to that, we could include the public input that we've had here in this chamber and the minutes of those added to this for to provide to the public. You know, there was public input in the very early stages of this and discussion here, and I'd like that as well as the
To be added to the non-public
Yeah,
minute?
thank you.
Yes, I don't recall that portion, but certainly I don't, any objection to that, would you see, Scott?
No, and any of those conversations would reflect publicly in the minutes. So we'll just organize those so that you have an opportunity to have what's already been approved as public minutes, just to be side by side with the non-public minutes that you're going to unseal. So that'll create the full picture, is I think what Councilor Cheney is hoping to do.
Thank you, Councilor Cheney, for the suggestion. Councilor Littman, I did see your hand raised there. Did you have something you'd want to share before I continue on?
I agree with the process. I think the manager's clarification of how to bring it forward is what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Littman. So if I may continue on now, as I said, the city has entered into a purchase and sale agreement to purchase two parcels at the corner of Church Street and Messer Street. Certainly pursuant to consolidation plans of the Catholic Diocese of Manchester. As we know, the St. Joseph's Church is, I believe, no longer used for masses. that I know of. Holy Trinity School, the older structure at that corner has been closed and moved to the campus of Sacred Heart. And I believe the rectory is still being used, which is the old Buzzell House there. Recently, within the past year, we'll say that entire parcel has been subdivided into 3 parcels, individual parcels, one being the rectory, the Buzzell House, one being the church, and the third being the school, if I'm not mistaken. The city has purchased the Buzzell House and rectory, the Holy Trinity School, the structure, as well as the parking lot behind St. Joseph's Church. These 2 parcels are purchased for $1.14 million. And I guess the question is fair, and people want to know, well, why buy this parcel of land? And what is our intention going forward? Certainly during the course of our discussions, it was very clear to everyone that we have limited parking options here in the downtown area. We have opportunities here to grow the local economy. And we also have an opportunity we will have the opportunity upon us to open up the Colonial Theater sometime in 2021 with a 750-seat venue. What we definitely needed was accessible parking that was conveniently located to downtown. And it was quite clear, I think, to all of us that if we want people to visit the downtown, either for our retail businesses or for our arts and entertainment venues or for going out to eat, we certainly needed to provide have the capacity to accommodate more visitors to our city. So this was a critical component in building that capacity so that we can accommodate what we hope to be more and more visitors to the city to visit all of the good things that are happening here. So the retail growth was an integral to the retail growth of our local economy and our downtown economy. I think it might be fair to say, and might be fair to question, people may ask, how does the city intend to pay for this parcel? And are we able to afford it? I think those are also excellent questions. The details, certainly perhaps the city manager can go into it a little bit if there are specific questions. But we had in the budget that was recently passed, we had a placeholder. And I want to keep in mind, remind everybody that the budget that was passed is tax cap compliant budget. And we have figured in certainly the net cost associated with the purchase of these parcels. It is certainly a topic for consideration that the city may not maintain ownership of both buildings on these parcels, since our primary motivation was to acquire parking spaces. And certainly going forward would consider options for both structures as to whether they will be used for something else or whether, and would there be interest in private parties coming along and purchasing those 2 buildings. I think the city is not in the business of owning extensive parcels of real estate and renting out parcels and renting out structures. I don't believe that was our intent. Our intent was to perhaps sell one or both and reduce our gross overall cost of the purchase price. This was an opportunity which is consistent with strong public-private partnership programs where the public body, now this being the city of Laconia, makes strategic investments which can then be leveraged by private investors to really spur on economic growth locally. I want to take this moment right now and say thank you to my fellow councilors who were involved in these discussions early on, dating back to late last year. But I also want to take an opportunity to say thank you to the city manager for your hard work in this and dedication, as well as Father Mark Druin and the Diocese of Manchester during the course of these negotiations, which because of COVID probably took a little longer than anticipated. But I think this is a strategic acquisition on behalf of the city that will provide great dividends going forward. It's really instrumental in reinvigorating our city. And I think it shows the extent of what this council, how this council views the future of this city, that we have great opportunities in front of us, and that sometimes it's going to take investment on behalf of the city, which certainly we've done extensively with the Colonial Theater, in which we're willing to continue to invest so we can build additional opportunities for private investment in our community. So I will stop right there with that and leave that as the extent of my mayor's comments for the evening. And certainly, since it's not an agenda item, if the public has questions or comments about it, certainly there'll be an opportunity to raise them as we move forward. Moving on to number 8, which is the consent and action items. Under 8A, this is a request for fundraising on city park property, a Lance Reason basketball tournament on Wyatt Park, which is tentatively scheduled. Well, I guess it is not tentative anymore, I suppose. It's September 19, 2020, with a rain date of September 26, 2020. Sarah Jenna has requested the use of Wyatt Park for the Lance Reason basketball tournament on Saturday, September 19th, from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. The city council approval is being requested because this fundraising event is anticipating revenues above $2,000. 100% of the proceeds will be donated to the Lance Reason Basketball Scholarship Fund. There is no direct cost to the city. A staff recommendation, which the report was submitted by Liza Kelleher, is that there is a recommendation that this request be approved. This is an appropriate use of city park property. The Parks and Recreation Committee has approved this request conditioned upon further approval from the city council. This is an annual event. So I'll be looking for a motion here to approve the request by Sarah Jenna for the use of Wyatt Park for the Lance Reason basketball tournament on Saturday, September 19th, 2020, with a rain date of September 26th, from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Haynes. And is there any discussion on this matter? Seeing none, I would ask the city clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Thank you very much. Moving on to 8B, which is a request from the Belknap Mills Society, Riverside Duck Derby Rotary Riverside Park, October 17th, 2020, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Just for transparency, I am a member of the board of directors at the Belknap Mill. But the Belknap Mill Society has requested the use of Rotary Riverside Park for Saturday, October 17th, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. for the Riverside Duck Derby fundraising event. Belknap Mill is the benefactor of the event. The city council is approval is being requested because this event is anticipating revenues above $2,000. There'll be no anticipated direct costs to the city. This was also submitted by Liza Kelleher. It is her recommendation that this request be approved. This is an appropriate use of the city park property. The Parks and Recreation Commission has approved this request conditioned upon further approval from the city council. This has been an annual event for several years, excuse me. Proposed motion to be looking for is a motion to approve the request from the Belknap Mill Society for the Riverside Duck Derby, Rotary Riverside Park, October 17th, 2020, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Moving along now to item number 9, which is citizen comments for matters not on the agenda. If citizens are tuning in or listening in and they want to speak to an issue that is not on tonight's agenda, now would be the appropriate time to do so. Raise your hand or let us know you'd like to speak. With no one raising their hand, we'll move along to number 11. Nominations, appointments, and elections. Jim Regatta is seeking reappointment as a regular member of the Putnam Fund to a 5-year term expiring at the end of March 2025. There is one regular member position up for reappointment on the Putnam Fund. This position is currently held by Mr. Regatta, and there are no vacancies. Otherwise, there are no vacancies on the Putnam Fund. Mr. Regatta was interviewed at the March 9th, 2020 City Council meeting. Appointments of individuals interviewed at that meeting were postponed due to the pandemic. Mr. Regatta's application was originally included in the council's March 9th agenda packet and more recently was provided to the councilors via email. Be looking for a motion to reappoint Jim Regatta as a regular member of the Putnam Fund to a 5-year term expiring at the end of March 2025. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Felch. Any further discussion on Jim Regatta's reappointment? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
yes,
Counselor Littman,
Yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
yes,
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. And thank you, councilors, and thank you to Jim Regatta for your willingness to serve. Moving on to 11B. David Keats seeking appointment as a regular member of the Building Code Board of Appeals to a 5-year term expiring at the end of March 2025. The Building Code Board of Appeals consists of 5 members, 3 which must meet specific criteria as a registered engineer, registered electrician, registered architect, registered plumber, or registered firematic. Currently, the engineer, electrician, and architect positions are filled with individuals registered in those fields, allowing the other 2 positions to be filled by members of the general public. Mr. Keats is applying to fill one of those general public positions. Mr. Keats was interviewed at the March 9th, 2020 City Council meeting. Appointments of individuals interviewed at that meeting were postponed due to the pandemic. Mr. Keats' application was originally included in the council's March 9th agenda packet and more recently was provided to the councilors via email. We'll be looking for a motion to appoint David Keats as a regular member of the Building Code Board of Appeals to a 5-year term expiring at the end of March 2025. So made by Councilor Haynes, seconded by Councilor Susie. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
yes,
Counselor Littman,
yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Keats. Congratulations and appreciate your willingness to serve. Moving on to 11C. Mitch Hamel is seeking reappointment as a regular member of the Parks and Recreation Commission to a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2023. There is one regular member position up for reappointment on the Parks and Recreation Commission. This position is currently held by Mr. Hamel. There are no vacancies on the there are no vacancies on the Parks and Recreation Commission. Mr. Hamel was interviewed at the March 9th, 2020 City Council meeting. Appointments of individuals interviewed at that meeting were postponed due to the pandemic. Mr. Hamel's application was originally included in the council's March 9th agenda packet and more recently was provided to the councilors via email. I'll be looking for a motion to reappoint Mitch Hamel as a regular member of the Parks and Recreation Commission to a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2023. So made by Councilor Felch and seconded by Councilor Susie. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
yes,
Counselor Littman,
yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
With 6 votes in the affirmative, motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Hamel, for your willingness to serve. Moving along to number 11D. Jane Whitehead seeking reappointment as a regular member of the Heritage Commission to a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2023. There is one regular member position up for reappointment on the Heritage Commission. This position is currently held by Ms. Whitehead. There is also one vacant regular member position and one vacant alternate position available on the commission. There are no other applicants at the current time. Ms. Whitehead was interviewed at the March 9th, 2020 City Council meeting. Appointments of individuals interviewed at that meeting were postponed due to the pandemic. Ms. Whitehead's application was originally included in the council's March 9th agenda packet and more recently was provided to the councilors via email. Be looking for a motion to reappoint Jane Whitehead as a regular member of the Heritage Commission to a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2023. So made by Councilor Haynes and seconded by Councilor Cheney. Further discussion, councilors? Seeing none, I ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
No.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
5 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Congratulations, Ms. Whitehead, and thank you for your willingness to serve. So now we are moving into the Historic District Commission. Now, let me see if I can. Right now, I'd be asking the council, we have 2 3-year positions on the HDC open, and I'd be looking to the council for a motion to fill the 2 seats for the 3-year terms. Okay. Councilor Hamel.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to nominate Kyle Wright and Sonia Masajic for the 2 people for the 3-year term.
So we're going to split those. And is it okay if he nominates both of them, or must he only nominate one? We have the vote, nominate a second, have the vote. Okay, got it. So I'm going to, Councilor Hamel, I'm going to ask you to nominate the first person, one person at a time.
Okay, Kyle Wright
Okay.
for
Is there
the
okay,
3-year term.
sorry to interrupt you. Seconded by Councilor Susie. And is there further discussion on Carl Wright's being nominated to a 3-year term on the Historic District Commission? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. Congratulations, Carl Wright, and thank you for your willingness to serve. So we have one more 3-year position, and be looking, Councilor Hamel, did you wish to nominate someone?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Sonia Masajic for the other position on the 3-year term.
And that's been seconded by Councilor Felch, if I am correct. Is there any further discussion on the nomination of Sonia Masashik for the 3-year term on the Historic District Commission? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes. Yes. I lose audio here.
No,
No, you're good.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. Congratulations, Sonia Masashik, and thank you for your willingness to serve. So those are the 2 3-year appointments to the Historic District Commission. We currently have a 2-year appointment and 2 alternate appointments open. So I would ask Counselor Littman, did you raise your hand for a nomination?
Yes, Tara Shore for the first one.
So Tara Shore has been nominated for the 2-year Historic District Commission, nominated by Counselor Littman, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. Congratulations, Sarah Shore, for your appointment and a 2-year term in the Historic District Commission. So we have 2 alternate positions available here as left to fill this evening. I'm looking for a nomination for one of the 3-year alternate
2-year.
terms. These 3 years or 2 years on the alternate? They're 3 years. Counselor Littman, would you raise your hand to nominate, or was that you, Counselor?
I did not.
You did not. Okay. Counselor Cheney, sorry.
If I might, I'd like to nominate Laurel
Briere,
Briere. Thank you.
no problem. Is there a second for Laurel Briere? Counselor Haynes, thank you. Any further discussion on Laurel Briere serving as a 3-year alternate member of the Historic District Commission? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
With 6 votes in the affirmative, congratulations to Laurel Briere, and you're being appointed to a 3-year alternate appointment to the Historic District Commission. So we have one more alternate position left, which is for a term of 3 years. And I'd be looking for someone to nominate. Counselor Littman, could you raise your hand? I'm sorry.
yes, Hillary Martin.
Is there a second for Hillary Martin? Counselor Felch, thank you. Is there any further discussion on Hillary Martin serving the second 3-year position? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
With 6 votes in the affirmative, Hillary Martin is appointed as an alternate member of the HDC for a 3-year term, and that fills out the commission in its entirety. Is that correct, Mr. Myers?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and the council has an appointment of Counselor Haynes, and he will be serving a 2-year term. And the planning board's appointee was Charlie St. Clair, and he's on for a 1-year term. So that rounds out 5 regular members and 2 alternates.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Counselor Haynes, for your willingness to serve. And thank you very much, council members, on your work. Bear with me just a moment. Moving along to our agenda item 11L, which is the Highway Safety Commission reappointment for Wes Anderson. On June 12th, 2017, the City Council appointed Public Works Director Wes Anderson to a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2020. Mr. Anderson has expressed interest in being reappointed. Due to the pandemic, appointments to boards and commissions have been delayed. We're looking for a motion to reappoint Wes Anderson to the Highway Safety Commission to a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2023. So made by Counselor Haynes and seconded by Counselor Susie. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
yes,
Counselor Littman,
yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. Congratulations, Wes, for your reappointment to the Highway Safety Commission. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Thank you, counselors. Moving along on our agenda this evening, since we've already had the mayor's report, we'll move right into number 16 for committee reports. We'll be looking to council members who are wishing to offer a report on the committees they serve on. Seeing nothing at this moment. Do we have any liaison reports? Any? Counselor Haynes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Okay, how about now? Better? Okay. The liaison, the Heritage Commission, yeah, I got the two mixed up. Yes, it was the Heritage Commission, met and dealt with 2 demolition permits. One for Court Street, which is the Stafford property. And I think that will relieve everybody that the spooky house will come down. And they have plans of enlarging their parking lot and their buildings and the whole works. So that's going to be improvement in the south end. The second was the Elm Street project. There was a lot of conversation relative to that permit, but it did pass so that that project can go forward. And I guess the plans are to at least have the foundations ready before winter sets in.
Thank you, Counselor Haynes, for the update on both of those projects and appreciate your work. There are no other liaison reports. Oh,
Counselor
hello.
Hamel.
Counselor Hamel, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to do a little update for Colonial. It is still moving along very well. Plumbing, electrical, and construction is moving on. It's over 50% completed now, probably 55. And they are now up in the balcony working to strip that and to redo the flooring there. The entranceway is being all completely redone and making good progress. If you notice, the ventilation systems on Canal Street are being installed. They're huge vent pipes, about 3 feet around, that will be going from the canal roof up to the theater roof, and in their process of doing that. So the project is going good. And as always, if anybody wants to make any donations, they can make that through Belknap Economic Development. They'll be glad to receive your check. So like I said, things are moving along great and still a completion date of December. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Counselor Hamel. Thanks for your dogged work in regards to the Colonial. Greatly appreciated. And it looks, having visited there a number of times now, it's just remarkable. I think when the public gets in there, they're going to be overwhelmed with its beauty. Any other liaison reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 18. This is citizens' request to comment on current agenda items. If there's anything on tonight's agenda that the citizens would like to discuss, comment on, now would be the appropriate time. And I'll wait for a little bit here to see if anyone raises their hand. So much for must-watch TV or much-watch Zoom, huh? We have a quiet crowd out there tonight. Okay, thank you. Moving right along now to number 19, which is the city manager's report. And Scott Myers, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll try to keep a good pace going here for the meeting. I do have 3 reports included in the packet this week. If you recall, due to some timing and some vacation in early August, we didn't have enough material to put a couple of the reports together, so they are all here for you tonight. First of all, most of these are tied to the fiscal year, which just began on July 1st, so 1 month of data. The exception on this one is the building permit report, which is the very top item on your report, which runs on the assessing year, April 1st to March 31st. So you can see that we had a nice little bump up in building permits pulled in the month of July. So we are running at a pace of over $11 million at this point, compared to about $6 million and $5 million at the same period for last year and the prior year. So that was nice to see. And any permits that were pulled did not include any of the larger redevelopments yet. So that does not include the Barton's, which I believe the demo permit has been issued on that, but they haven't pulled the building permit yet, nor anything to do with a large project potentially on Elm Street in Lakeport. So these are other activities that are occurring. So that's it's a very positive sign. The fire and rescue data for July, a very busy month. You can see the comparison to last year and the prior years. Again, I think lack of rain, strong summer weather, hot weather, people staying closer to home and not traveling as much has made for Laconia to be busy this summer in a number of areas. And I think our calls reflect that, especially from when we saw a drop in the spring. We still seem to be on a pretty downward path or a steady downward trend on the public assistance data. This we believe is tied to several things, tied to the stay for shutting off utilities on folks, on any evictions tying in, and then when some of those programs expired, a program through CAP in the region to help assist with some of those things. So again, for the time being, while those other programs are in place, they seem to be a good safety net and taking care of the needs of a lot of residents who otherwise might be coming to city welfare. Turning the page on the police department activity, you'll see a significant jump up over the July activity with the corresponding month last year, July. A lot of that, if you run down, is tied into motor vehicle stops. So I know that'll be near and dear to Councillor Cheney's heart with the traffic division, but you can see a little more than doubling the number of motor vehicle stops. It didn't really increase the number of summonses. If you look at the fact that we've stopped twice as many vehicles, we only issued 31 summonses versus 21. So again, I think the purpose of this, as is reflected in the written warnings, is the education component of it, as opposed to something a little harsher on that. But certainly written warnings do go on someone's record, and if they are stopped another time, that will certainly show that they received that. So we appreciate the work PD is doing on that. Property tax collection was a large question mark for a lot of communities coming into this late June and into July in regards to collection because of the pandemic and unemployment rate and people's ability to pay. We have collected at a rate of just over 95.5%, which puts us not only on track, but better than most of the last 7 years. There was 1 year where our collection percentage was higher, but a very strong position. We think the quick response from the state and the federal government with some of the unemployment benefits, some of the stimulus dollars coming out in the various programs have helped with that. So it's certainly something we will monitor for the remaining 6 months out of this year and beyond. But that was a nice number to see, and it really was reflective of a lot of our neighboring communities as well. They all were reporting to have very similar collections to what they had experienced in prior years. Motor vehicle registrations, again, the same type of thing. There's questions about people's ability to trade in a car or upgrade the vehicle they have to a newer or a new vehicle. Again, you can see that in terms of the dollar amount, what we collected in July of fiscal year 21 was basically a couple $1,000s ahead of July fiscal year 20. So again, very solid numbers in the sales and the registration of vehicles. The overtime, again, we're 1 month into the year. Nothing really out of line to report on here. I'll just remind when we're looking at that. Overtime, if we are using it and possibly being reimbursed for it through details or other overtime expenses related to COVID, it will still show up as an expense here, but there might be a revenue reimbursement stream that comes in elsewhere in the city's accounting. So if you have questions on any of the details there, please don't hesitate to let me know. Not a whole lot of change. Parks and Rec facility use requests, you can see, are down significantly. That's fairly self-explanatory. Impact fees, as properties get their certificate of insurance, are coming online. You'll see some small increases In the revenue year-to-date column, about $2,300 was collected to various accounts. Again, boat taxes off to a good start to the year. And again, we've heard anecdotally that with people staying home more and not traveling on vacation, boat sales have gone very strong. And you can see that carry into the first month, July here of 21. EMS billing, we have, ticked back up on the number of responses that our ambulance is having. When the pandemic hit in full force in the latter part of March, and the shutdowns and the stay-at-home orders and schools being switched to remote learning, you can see we were dropping from our average number of calls of over 300 down to as low as 237 calls in the month of April. That has slowly trended back up to the high 200s and the 300s. And again, on the last page, the July number of ambulance responses was 337. So again, attributable to a little bit more of a normalcy and summertime and a lot of people here in Laconia and the Lakes region. Moving on to the project update, as far as construction projects go, we're out of all the main streets at this point. Lafayette Street is the area that the water department has finished the water line project. The city is there now working on sewer drain and drain for the road and the sidewalk improvements. So we are there and expected to be there through the remainder of August and September and into October. One other item to bring to your attention in the planning stages is the sewer work scheduled in the Lakeport area. We are 75% complete with the design work on that, and the sewer work is scheduled to be happening, let me turn my page here, basically on Elm Street from Franklin to Hickory Stick Lane, and then on Mechanic Street, the entire length from Union to Clinton, and then a couple of the side streets as well. So work should be happening in late fall, and then we'll button up those areas that we're working on, and we'll get back in the spring of 21 to continue work over there. The final report in your packet for tonight is the Economic Development Report. So this is a snapshot of where the unemployment rate is. So again, from what had peaked at a high of over 20% in the state and closer to 25% in Laconia a few months back, the numbers have continued to come down. So Laconia specific, we're a little bit under 15% for the June data. And again, this is June data, not July data. And again, you can see the county at around 13% and the overall state number coming in a little bit under 12%. I was watching one of the hearings that the governor had the other day, and the most recent data that they're tracking weekly is continued to show that that number continues to drop at the state level. We don't have the specific detail on Laconia and Belknap County broken out yet, but those numbers are trending statewide down into the 7 to 8% range right now. So also showing a good comeback on that. The final piece on the second page of that report, page 42 on your agenda, is the CPIU, also known as the Inflation Index. And this is the second component, along with the new building construction value that I already spoke of earlier. That and the inflation number tie into what's referred to as our tax cap calculation for next year's budget, and determines what the maximum amount that could be raised by taxes is. So while we've seen strength in the building construction to date this year, since the pandemic hit in March, you can see that inflation fell from where it was running in the mid 2% all the way down to 1.5%, 0.3%, 0.1%, and a slight rebound the last 2 months to 0.6%, and then July inflation running at 1%. But year to date, we are still running somewhere below 1.2% for inflation, and we've got 5 months left in the year to go before that number will be finalized after we receive the December number. One final thing is I followed up with Erica Blizzard of Lakeport Landing regarding the request of this post tower being painted in some sort of red or brick finish. She did respond to me. She gave it considerable thought to the council's request. It's not something that she is able to do. So that is the response from Ms. Blizzard. Along with her response, I had shared with you in the past that she was getting replacement letters done for the inside of the building where the brick remains for Lakeport Fire Department and Lakeport Station. And she did send a rendering, and I'm hoping that this maybe can be picked up there, that she did have the replica letters recreated and mounted. So those are there on the brick archways, the old garage doors in the building now. So I will stop at this point and take any questions anyone may have on any of the above or anything else that's on your mind tonight.
Manager,
Oh, sorry. Yes, Counselor Littman. Go
I
ahead.
was wondering if you could report out on Motorcycle Week thus far?
Yes, I'm happy to. From firsthand visiting it both on Friday, just to kind of look at setup and any buildup, and also being down there for a while around noontime on Saturday and Sunday. And I know some other counselors were down, and I know the mayor was down there as well. Saturday was very busy in terms of parking spaces being full, and probably a little bit heavier than normal foot traffic on the boardwalk, although maybe on line with what July 4th weekend would look like down there. The Weirs Action Committee did a great job with setting up the parking lot and having the spaces separated where Public Works had dropped off the barricades. It was, I believe, almost all cars down in the beach parking lot with maybe a 1 or 2 motorcycles. When I was down there in the noontime area, beach capacity was running somewhere just north of 500. And I think we peaked out beach capacity that day at 700. So we did not hit the 1,000-person current maximum that we have for the beach. Lakeside Avenue had a good, probably all the parking spaces filled. It was probably a mix of maybe 50-50 between cars and motorcycles. And, there was good foot activity. There was a little bit of a line of folks at the Motorcycle Week Association tent that ran as folks were picking up memorabilia items, pins or t-shirts and that type of stuff. And I know they had a very busy first day of merchandise sale there. So that probably was the only area that we saw a little bit of congregating. And again, maybe 20, 25 people in line waiting to cash out. Speaking with both chiefs from their perspective, it was when I say quiet in terms of incidents, it was a quiet day for them overall, speaking, no different than any other weekend down there. Chief Canfield also did reach out with our partners at State Liquor to get their take and to see if they had any issues, and there were none to report from the Liquor Commission. Yesterday was probably just a little bit quieter in the daytime than Saturday was, but again, a good mix of bikes and motorcycles, and for the most part, crowds had plenty of opportunity to separate from themselves. I would say probably half of the people and the whole mix of people, not just people here for Motorcycle Week, were wearing masks, and the other half probably weren't. But I don't think that was attributable to whether they were family vacationers versus folks here specifically for Motorcycle Week. There was a good mix of both across the board. Beach capacity yesterday was a bit less. And again, from the chief's Public Works perspective of handling any trash volume and stuff, everything went very smoothly, and the visual of the mix of people and the volume of people, I think, was exactly how the mayor and the council and our planning folks were looking at it, and we're pleased to report that.
Counselor Hamel.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd just like to say that I had the opportunity to do the Peter Macris ride on Saturday, and there was about 95 bikes. I think the NASWA did a great job as far as making people wear masks and kind of stay somewhat away from each other. So that went very well. I had the opportunity to go there today with Mayor Ed Engler, and it was around noontime. We went up to Weirs and drove through. And parking at the beach, there's probably 5 cars, and there was a lot of empty spaces down on Lakeside. So it wasn't a whole lot of activity up there that I could see middle of the afternoon or midday. So just wanted to state that.
Thank you, Counselor Hamel. And as I've shared with a couple of folks today, I've been on Lakeside Avenue, I think a total of 7 times over the past 4 days. And I would agree with everything, your impressions, Scott and Bob. One thing I noticed that I was pleased about, because I think you can extrapolate something good from it, is the number of vehicles, looking at the license plates on the vehicles that were parked on Lakeside Avenue and in the parking lots. It was primarily New Hampshire and Massachusetts plates, with a smattering of plates from Vermont, Maine, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. I did not see one car or sport utility full-size vehicle with a plate that was from outside of New England. I didn't see one motorcycle with a plate from outside of New England. So I would say, at least based on the first weekend's assessment, from my perspective, is that, where you are, people from within New England, perhaps who are day tripping or just coming up for a couple of nights, are making the trip here. It's not like years past when people were coming from New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and certainly Canada and parts farther away. So in that respect, the people who are coming here are coming from areas where, compared to other parts of the country, it's certainly relatively a safer environment. So I was pleased to see that. Any other comments? Yes, Councillor Felch.
Yes, considering that the beach parking lot's been mostly cars, I was wondering if we could consider opening up the rest of those spaces for WAC. I mean, people get out of the car, they walk away. It's not like they're hanging out in the parking lot.
So the mayor's looking at me for comment. Yes, I don't think we'd have a problem with that. I think the cautiousness was warranted early on because we wanted to get through that first weekend, which we thought might be a very busy weekend in terms of motorcycles and getting there. So I think we can, if the council's desire, I think we can, take away the restriction of the barricades, which eliminated 15 spaces. Again, like I echo what Councillor Hamel said when I was down there early this afternoon, there was plenty of parking spaces left down there. So I don't know how busy the weekdays are, as some folks are getting back to planning for a remote school or in-person school and that type of stuff. So, and I also think even on the weekend, it's the beachgoers who are probably up a little bit earlier and getting to the beach at 7 a.m. and not necessarily the motorcyclists. And if they are down there at 7 a.m., they probably have other parking options available to them on Lakeside Avenue. So I think with or without the barricades, there's capacity for this week. From a staff recommendation, I wouldn't have a problem with us pulling the barricades back and just letting the lot run normally like it did all the other weekends this year.
I would think most of those motorcyclists have probably finished school. I think that's a pretty good idea, Councillor Felch.
Mayor, you're on mute.
You're muted, Mayor.
My best line of the night. I wasted it and I'm mute.
We heard it.
So, Scott, do you think that should be a motion right now for you to do that, or you just wanted to handle it unilaterally and we're satisfied with it?
I just think if there's consensus and we look around and no one's objecting to it, I can just handle that administratively.
Okay. All right, then. Thank you, Councilor Felch. I think that's a good idea. And if there's consensus, unless there's objection, I think the city manager should be in charge of that, opening it up a little bit more.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with no further comments, thank you very much, Scott. I appreciate your work, and not only on the reports this evening, but certainly on your work regarding what's going on with Motorcycle Week, and certainly kudos to the Chief of Police for his work. I know they were out, not necessarily in force, but they were out and they were active, and please share with him our appreciation. Mm-hmm. Moving on to new business, I'd like to beg your indulgence just a little bit here, because I think this is the second bit of really great news that we have to share with certainly the council, but also the public who's tuned in. Councillor Hamel has been our liaison, been the council's liaison, keeping an eye on the construction project, and that is progressing very nicely. And but on the other hand, what we've had to start working on was who's going to come in and manage the Colonial Theater and get it ready so it can have the economic impact to the downtown area that we anticipated, and certainly that Mayor Engler anticipated when he was pursuing this endeavor for a number of years. So certainly starting out right around the first of the year, a committee was put together of people from the city who had some experience with the Colonial up to that point, as well as people who had an interest in the arts and seeing the development of this theater. And we were chugging right along on a really compressed schedule, wondering how we were going to open up in beginning of 2021, and then COVID hit. And that slowed down not only the committee's work, but certainly I think tempered expectations as to when the Colonial might be open, and bringing acts in to use the facility so we can begin to enjoy this great venue. What I'd like to report right now is that after a number of months and meetings and interviews and reviewing opportunities, I'd like to bring to the council's consideration tonight a recommendation from the committee to have the city manager enter into formal contract negotiations with Spectacle Management. Spectacle Management is a group out of Massachusetts that, let me step back right now. When we began this process at the beginning of the year, the committee had recommended that perhaps the city put out a request for information. We would detail exactly what we wanted from a management company and lay it all out there in detail and see how many responses we got. Well, with the onset of COVID, we were very disappointed that we get zero responses. And we had some preliminary conversations with folks that I thought would be great fits for the theater, but they didn't respond. So working through that disappointment, we did in fact reach out to two groups of people to commence discussions and find out, did they actually have an interest, and was there a reason they didn't respond to the request for information? One of those groups would be Brian and Johanna Halperin, who are most people know are from Meredith, I believe, but they were certainly prominent in the Winnipesaukee Playhouse and getting that up and off the ground and into its successful position that it's in right now. And I know Justin Slattery at the Belknap Economic Development Council had some discussions with a group called Spectacle Management out of Massachusetts that managed theaters throughout New England and had some interest. So we reached out to them and began discussions. And it was interesting because I think each entity had a certain talent, but they didn't, each entity did not have all the skills that perhaps we were looking for. So at some point, the committee decided, well, we should introduce the two parties, that being the Halperins and Spectacle Management, to see if they could see how they hit it off, sort of romancing, I guess, to some courting, I guess we'll say. And we had a meeting here in the city with them, and it was really remarkable to see that they hit it off quite well. Spectacle is very much a professional organization that engages with acts from national touring acts, and they are engaged in marketing and ticketing, concessions, building a brand for theaters throughout New England. They had a desire to have people involved on a more day-to-day basis who were from the community and understood the community, so they'd have that local knowledge and that local experience to help them be successful. Well, that's exactly what the Halperins brought. Halperins were, on the other hand, wondering whether they really wanted to manage a full-blown theater like the Colonial is, and that's where Spectacle came in and said, well, we've got all the experience. We have an awful lot of experience in managing the theater. Spectacle Management, I'll give you just some idea of what they managed throughout New England. The Lowell Auditorium, the Shallon Lou in Rockport, Lowell Auditorium's in Lowell, Shallon Lou is in Rockport, Massachusetts, Larcom, which is in Beverly, the Carey Memorial Hall, which is in Lexington, Massachusetts, Plymouth Memorial Hall, which is in Plymouth, Massachusetts, Tilden Arts Center, which is in West Barnstable, Massachusetts, and the Barnstable Performing Arts, which is in Hyannis, Massachusetts, both of those located, of course, on Cape Cod. So what after some discussions between the Halperins and Spectacle, what has been produced here is give you basically the highlights of the opportunity, the general parameters for agreement between Spectacle and the city. They are suggesting a 5.5-year term, which the term seemed pretty good to us in that we didn't want to employ someone or hire someone for 1 year and have them say it wasn't profitable enough and have them leave. So the idea of them having a little time to build the brand, to build the customer base, if you will, as well, was very important to us. And so doing, Spectacle will be the exclusive manager of the theater. with year-round marketing, ticketing, booking, food and beverage, technical services, facility management, and calendar management. They will provide a full-time operations manager for 12 months a year. Spectacle will contract with national touring artists at Spectacle's own financial risk, which I think is critically important. Certainly the city of Laconia is not in the entertainment business, though. I may think I'm pretty funny sometimes here. But what we are not doing is we are building this facility, but we do not want to day-to-day manage this operation. Who takes the risk when you engage with national artists to come in here? The risk being the artists are going to be guaranteed a certain sum of money, and the booking agent and the producer, the production company, will be making that money back through ticket sales and concessions. They'll share in if the ticket sales and concessions don't live up to expectations, they'll share in that risk. They'll shoulder that risk, actually. And they'll also be able to share in the profits if they sell more tickets and sell more concessions than their original investment in the artist and the other services associated with putting a show on. So Spectacle showed up here and decided and have offered to take on that entire risk, which I think is a great relief in so many respects. Really what we're looking to do is have the Spectacle is committed to maximizing the economic impact of the Colonial Theater to not only the downtown area in the city of Laconia, but also the entire area. They are in agreement with Brian and Johanna Halperin to become the resident theater company there. They will do that in conjunction with being the theatrical artists and residents at the Belknap Mill, which is great. The commitment on behalf of the city of Laconia for this projected 5 years is also, I believe, consistent with what our expectations were. We had anticipated offering an operating subsidy on a yearly basis going forward, and this is what's been suggested is certainly consistent with what we anticipated offering for a yearly subsidy. That being $72,000 in 2021, going up about 3% a year, and topping out in 2026 at $162,000. $72,000 for 21 is half a year. Is that correct? It's half a year. That's why that starts out kind of low. But anticipation was that the city would commit $140,000 or thereabouts on a yearly basis. So I think this is very exciting to have such a professional operation. And I know Scott and I have been very favorably impressed when meeting with Pete Lally and his team out of Spectacle Management. And I just want to say thank you to the committee, the Colonial Theater Planning Committee, which we formed in late 2019. And I want to say thank you to certainly Mayor Ed Engler, who was the real motivating force behind this theater and getting it moving and getting it to this position where it is right now. Thanks for your participation in the committee, Mayor Engler. I want to say thank you to Justin Slattery from Belknap Economic Development Corporation, to Elizabeth Howard, who was really instrumental in bringing a vision for the theater for all of us. Randy Eifert, who's been involved in this theater for a number of years. Certainly Rod Dyer has been involved in this as well. He was a terrific, gave us an awful lot of sage wisdom and advice there. Jared Gamet on the committee was extraordinarily helpful. Karen Pryor from the Belknap Mill also assisted and was terrific. And I also want to say thank you to Christopher Boothby as well, who was brought a certain focus and clarity to our meetings that was invaluable. Also, again, Scott Myers was really very helpful in all of this as well. And I would certainly be remiss if I didn't remember our former colleague here in the council, David Bounds, who felt so passionately about this theater, but also felt so passionately about Brian and Johanna Halperin and the talents they brought, and really was an advocate for getting them in front of all of us who are trying to figure out this management portion of what's going on at the Colonial Theater. So I always appreciate David's work there, and certainly something that's missed going forward. So what I'd like to do is, as you can see, members of the council, the proposal is here. I believe answers to some follow-up questions may or may not be there. I'm not sure. Yes, in the appendix. No. Anyway, it's fairly extensive. I'm happy to take any questions. I'm sure Scott is as well if you've got any right now. But what we would be looking to do right now is for a motion to authorize the city manager to draft a contract between the city and Spectacle Management for the operation and management of the Colonial Theater using the Spectacle proposal dated July 1st, 2020, and follow-up correspondence as the framework for the contract, and to bring the contract back to the city council for final approval. So made by Councilor Felch, and is there a second by Councilor Haynes? I would open this up to further discussion of members of the council right now.
I have one question.
Yes, Councilor Susie, thank you.
I see a note in here that the city provides a full liquor license. Okay, and food service permits and all that. How about the insurance on the liquor license? You might say somebody goes to the theater, and we've seen this, and I know I've seen it happen, I think Councilor Cheney has also. Somebody leaves there and gets involved in an accident and there's liability and all.
Absolutely. I think that's a great question, Councilor Susie. Perhaps City Manager Myers will give us a little direction on that.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Susie. Great question. So once we got the initial proposal, there were several items that various committee members wanted clarification on, including municipal use, the charge for municipals, charge for nonprofit users, regional nonprofits, that type of stuff. Attorney Dyer also wanted to make clear what the points you just brought up, not only in the appropriate liability and protections in place in the commercial insurance package, but to that specific point, what I followed up with Pete Lally and his team is that the city would not be procuring the liquor license. It would be Spectacle who would be procuring it as the operator, in essence, for food and beverage at the theater. And that in the state of New Hampshire, liquor is approved through the state New Hampshire Liquor Commission, and that the overwhelming majority of food establishments are licensed by the state. There are probably a dozen or so, maybe, that I can think of self-inspecting communities for food licenses. So I let Pete know that we certainly would support them in their applications, because we are the lessee of the theater, if you will, but that those licenses would be their responsibility and their insurance, and he fully understands that.
I just wanted to make sure that we weren't liable in some way from when I read that. That's all, I wasn't explained there. And I look at this and I think it's fantastic, and then the other thing is we have a lot of work to do in the rest of the downtown. We're going ahead and buying St. Joseph's in that parking lot and putting more infrastructure in. And I just see another big, something else we're gonna have to try really put together with the downtown that financial association or something to get some more buy-in from some of the local retailers to do something with the buildings and add some more establishments, something. I don't know what we can do as a city, but we're putting a lot into it.
I think one of the items that has taken a little bit of a backseat due to COVID, but I know the mayor was very strong on it, and I think as the world starts to open up a little more, was he had identified a small business roundtable, and that was prior to you coming on the council, but to focus on not just the downtown, but Laconia, and how we can be more user-friendly as a community and what we can do to support businesses. And now, as I think we're starting to open up and some of the restrictions are lifted, I think the expectation is we would get that back on track, hopefully for, maybe early this fall, and get that business roundtable together again. And like I say, that was one of the goals the council adopted in their goal setting strategy at the end of January. I'm going to jump off track 1 second. We are in the first process for those councilors who were part of that of putting together the first update of that. Again, a little bit of that has fallen on the back burner because of COVID and a lot of the things that, like the mayor mentioned, this particular management group we were supposed to identify by the end of March, I think, and hopefully have in place by June. Well, we're just a little bit behind, as we are on a couple of things. So we are working on the first goals and objectives update based on what the council goals were, and we'll probably look to have that to you by the first week in September.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I'm a big believer in the small business. I like to see the mom and pop stores come back, and no more the big box stores. I think have had their run. That's why.
Thank you very much, Councilor Susie. Any other comments or questions about?
You're muted, but that's okay. I actually have already talked to somebody that's interested in renting some of the space downstairs, actually a couple of the units down in front of the theaters. So I think once that gets rolling, things are going to move along.
Thank you, Counselor Felch. Any other questions or comments? Counselor Hamel?
Yes, thank you. I hope everybody takes the time to read this proposal by Spectacle Management. For a company to come up here unknowing of the demographics and, everything else, to have this proposal basically from soup to nuts to manage this theater and to do it 365 days a year with a permanent person there is pretty remarkable, I think. They have a good reputation. They bring in really good shows to their other venues. And they were also looking at Nashua. Nashua is in the process of looking to build a theater down there, and they were looking at that too. So they can bring in groups and tour them all around their theaters. We'd be in line for that. It's like I said, it's for them to come here and to be willing to include all the different activities that we want to see there is pretty remarkable. From the Putnam Fund to high school to the theater part of it, even Meadowbrook and whatever else we ask them to do, they're very willing to do it. So I think it's a fantastic fit, and it's a great thing that they came up here and go along with doing this.
Thank you, Counselor Hamel. I agree. And yes, Mr. Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to echo one thing on what Councilor Hamel just brought up, and I believe they have a great reputation and have a lot of contacts. That being said, and as the mayor alluded to, I think we want to temper expectations right out of the gate on a couple of areas, and most importantly is what COVID is going to do to all of this as far as, number one, when touring shows and acts are starting to even think about getting back on the road again, and folks in the industry are indicating that it's most likely July 1 of next year or later when they're looking at it. Number two, what is the capacity going to be in terms of us being able to put the number of people into the theater that it holds? Are we going to be at a point where we can get 750 people seated side by side and in front and in back of each other? We don't know that right now. So I think as Pete likes to say, they're coming up, they're making a significant investment. That's part of the reason they've looked for the 5.5 years, because they know they're going to lose money in the first year or two, most likely. And they want to be able to build that base and be in it for the long haul. But also, just going with COVID and what it might look like, there's not going to be, 15, 20, 30 shows right out of the gate in the Colonial, all coming from touring companies. It's going to be a blend of municipal use, community uses, certainly trying to do some touring acts when conditions allow. But Pete is very cognizant of our desire to have it active. But again, with all their dollars at risk, they need to be smart, and we understand. So, like I say, he likes to say, crawl, walk, and then run. So I think that's prudent to keep in our mind so that we don't expect, activity there 30 nights a month, starting January 1st. It's just not feasible in these conditions.
That's correct, Scott. He did mention that most likely nothing would probably happen until mid-year. And there again, depending on the acts touring and the COVID situation. So I'm glad you did bring that up.
Counselor Cheney.
If I may, Mayor, I'd like to piggyback on Councilor Susi's concern. Is it possible at the next meeting we could see a breakdown of the insurances that are included in this, or is that already included in this document that we were given tonight?
I think that would be in the terms of what we put in the contract for minimum requirements, and that the city is named as an additional assured or whatever is appropriate, and that would all be spelled out in a contract brought to you. Certainly happy once we start to draft some of that language to give you updates along the way of what we're thinking.
I guess that's what I'm looking for, is because a contract can get pretty boring after a while.
Well, I think we got this to the committee level, and then, as you know, sometimes when you get a committee of 9, if they're all trying to wordsmith and insert things into a contract, we'd be here until December wordsmithing it. So I think that's why the motion is directing me to take the lead at this point on this framework, but duly noted that we want to make sure of the liability concerns and that we're protected. Thank you.
Good question, Council Ginny. I also wanted to make clear for the council and the public as well that the theater planning committee, it was unanimous as far as all the committee members to recommend Spectacle and the Halperins to the city council as well. I don't know if I was clear about that, but certainly there was unanimity when we last spoke. I believe in the middle of last week. It was extraordinarily positive. Any further discussions right now? So we do have a motion on the table. Without any further discussion, I'd ask the city clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
With 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. And thank you very much, councilors, for allowing me to speak about this. And I think this is a really thrilling opportunity for the city of Laconia. I'm just really pleased to be able to take this out and report it to you. So thank you for the support. Moving on to 20B, which is conversion of three of the 2-hour parking spaces on Union Avenue in front of 781 Union Avenue to 15-minute parking spaces. 781 Union Avenue is the Opera House where Wayfair and the Laconia Daily Sun is now that space that they are occupying. This was an item put on the agenda requested by Councilor Felch. Thank you, Councilor Felch. And there's a lot going on here. So go right ahead, City Manager Myers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So we took this opportunity to do a little housekeeping and cleanup as well on some other parking ordinances that hadn't been fully updated into the code, but were approved. So you've got an extra motion or two here. I can assure you that the 15-minute parking will go to a public hearing at our next meeting and you can take action on it then. Kind of more of the housekeeping stuff we'll be working on through the end of the year and bring you those changes probably around the first part of January. So we took this opportunity since we were dealing with this particular chapter in parking to clean up a couple of items as well. But this will not delay those 15-minute spaces from going to a public hearing for our next meeting.
You're muted. You're muted, Mayor.
One, two, three, four, five motions here. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. All right. So bear with me and here we go. We're looking for a motion to waive a reading of this ordinance in its entirety and to read by title only. Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. I'll be looking for a second motion to move a first reading of the ordinance 221-37 pertaining to the conversion of 3 parking spaces from 2-hour parking to 15-minute parking in front of 781 Union Avenue. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Cheney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Be looking for another motion to schedule a public hearing on September 14th, 2020 during the regular city council meeting to gather public input prior to adoption. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. I'd be looking for a motion to move that the police and public works departments continue to enforce the previously approved parking restrictions. So made by Counselor Phelps, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Any further discussion? Seeing none,
Yes.
I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mayor,
Oh, sorry about that. Counselor Littman, it may have gone a little too fast.
can ask the manager to address that one for a moment?
Certainly.
Yeah, I'm a little cloudy on it too.
Yes, happy to. So when starting to review the language for the changes here, it was identified that some other items that haven't, that were meant to be updated within the code have lagged a little bit, and rather than just those changes occurring, that we would bring them forward in a concise package and do one update and just kind of be a little more open and transparent, rather than some things that maybe should have been included from years ago, just all of a sudden appearing there and people wondering how they got there. So that's all. It's a little housekeeping, but in the meantime, some of the areas that we have been enforcing, we just want to make sure that we continue to do so we're consistent.
And so this is a motion to put that into a hearing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it doesn't need a hearing. It's just something that we'll work on under chapter 221 and bring it back to you for the update and the review with the council, and just the affirmation is what it is.
Thank you.
Counselor Hamel, do you need a follow-up on that at all?
No, I'm good. That clarifies it. So
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor Littman. I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
yes,
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
With 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. And finally, I'll be looking for a motion to move that Public Works update the current code of ordinances to reflect all previously approved parking restrictions by January 1st, 2021. So made by Counselor Felch and seconded by Counselor Cheney. Thank you. Further discussion, counselors? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
yes,
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Thank you, council members. Moving right along to number 20D, which is the estimated savings by converting curbside solid waste collection from a manual to an automated system. I'll turn this over to the city manager. Did I? Oh, I absolutely did. My apologies. Thank you. 20C. These are proposed changes to Chapter 201-15, Streets and Sidewalks, Article 2, Protection of Streets, and Section 201-16, Excavation, Driveway, Paving, and Digging Permits. I would, once again, turn this over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this will be near and dear to Councilor Hamel's heart, I am sure, and I'm looking for him to make this motion and enthusiastically make it. But the background on this is anytime that any community goes in and does maintenance on streets, we work with all of the utilities, not only city utilities, but private utilities, water, everything, not water, but gas lines or cable lines, electrical, those types of things. Everyone's notified that if they need to make repairs or upgrades and this road is being reconstructed or paved, that they need to do them ahead of time, because we're not going to allow them to cut into a road within a 5-year period after that. We all know that there are certainly emergencies that happen and things that need to get fixed that are unwarranted, but a lot of communities had said, by these cuts going in, they damage our roads, they shorten the pavement life. We get cracks, and even though we get patches, water gets into it and, takes our investment and really shortens its lifespan. A few years back, the city of Manchester and the city of Concord started enacting some expanded fees and expanded fixes to newer roads that were cut into for these types of activities, and they were challenged by the utilities. The case went all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled in the favor of Manchester and Concord. We looked for any challenges or looked for language. And since then, in addition to those two cities, Portsmouth and Lebanon have instituted similar fee systems. So we think it's time to dip our toe in the water, if you will. As you know, we don't always like to be first. We like to learn from others and be able to review a couple of ordinances and see what the responses are and how the utilities have worked with them. So this one is similar to what the other municipalities have done. There's a damage charge based on the amount of area disturbed within the right of way. There's a per square foot fee. We also look to implement a pavement of life reduction factor when the pavement's 5 years or less. In some cases, there's a little bit of a rolling schedule. So at a couple of years, it's one multiplier, and a few years later, it's another multiplier. But what it really does is it provides the city a protection that investments that we're making in our infrastructure are protected with really a very quality patch and repair job when it's cut into new pavement. So I can stop there and see if there are any questions, but that's basically what the bottom half of the page is talking about. The formula, how it would be calculated. And again, these have to be justifiable, similar to impact fees. When a community institutes impact fees, you just can't pick numbers out of the air. You need to justify how those are designed and calculated. Same thing with these cuts into newer pavement. They've got to be able to be justifiable. And we think with a couple of communities having some examples in front of us that we can follow suit and again, take an additional step to protect cities' infrastructure and taxpayer dollars.
So questions, Counselor Felch.
Yeah, I was just wondering how this might affect a potential new business going in.
It could have an impact on a new business. Ideally, we're hoping that a new business already has the connections going into it. If there's conduits for electrical or cable or gas, if it's an area of the city where there's gas, I mean, those things could already be in place. If it was somebody going into a building and we knew we were paving the road and there was gas in the area, but there wasn't gas to that particular building, I believe the utilities do a pretty good job of saying, hey, if you want to get gas installed to your building right now, now's the time to do it. Otherwise, you basically have a 5-year moratorium where we're not going to be able to cut into the road and bring you the gas. So I think that kind of communication occurs right now on a regular basis. I can't speak to every potential nuance of a business changing hands and somebody needs X. They should obviously go into it with their eyes wide open. And the Department of Public Works is happy to speak with them and the utilities and say, if we need to do a cut into new or newer pavement, this is the repair expense that you can expect to incur from doing that cut into a newly paved or reconstructed city road.
Counselor Hamel.
Thank you. I don't know, you might be a little surprised, Scott. I want to go through this better. I just kind of went over it a little bit. So my question is this going also to the utility companies if they dig a trench or something? Or is this just private?
If an ordinance like this is passed by the city, we certainly will get it to our appropriate municipal contacts at all of the utility companies so they're aware of the impact. And again, all of our utilities typically do a very good job of doing the updates when we're going in and paving certain roads. So anything that we've done on Court Street, whenever we did Lakeside Avenue, all the stuff we've done on Union Ave, all of those utilities are working with us in advance. Sometimes some unforeseen things happen, or, we all hear the story of, hey, we just paved that road and someone's in tearing it up because, there was a break. Some of these are just, acts of God, so to speak, and you're not going to control them. But in those particular cases, this expanded repair would come in basically to protect the investment that the city made.
All right, so I guess my question is, say the gas company comes in, similar to on Church Street or a cable company or whatever, and digs a foot-wide trench. Are they going to be charged this fee for this trench that they did for possible future repair to it? Or is this just related to someone building a home? They have to go out into the street and tie into the utilities?
No, it would be the utility company. If they're coming in to repair a damaged line or a failed line of some sort, based on the impact and the amount of square footage that they're disturbing, and how new the pavement is, there'll be a different multiplier if the pavement was just laid last month versus if the pavement was 4 years old. I mean, we need to be reasonable on those types of things. But yes, there are different benchmarks depending on amount of area that's impacted and the age of the pavement. And again, this is, I believe, and I'll look forward in a second, I believe this is dealing with pavement of 5 years or newer. We're not trying to go back to something that's 10 years old and saying, oh, we don't care, the pavement's already gone through 80% of its useful life, but we're gonna whack you with an extra repair job because it's in our ordinance. We're really trying to protect that 5-year or less pavement with a better than a trench patch repair, which I know you like to point them out on how good they are, or sometimes not how good they are. This is trying to address that the repair goes above and beyond to protect those tax dollars.
Okay, so just to quantify, this is for, also includes contractors that come in and dig up our streets.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now getting to the other part, does this also, will this also be a fee for a, like Tony brought up, a business that wants to come in and he has to provide a new entrance for water or sewerage to the building? Or would that be the?
Well, again, I would think that if someone is buying an existing building, that they're looking at what their needs are and seeing if the existing utilities that are brought into the building meet their need. If not, they certainly would be working with their contractor to identify if they needed a larger water line to be brought in, or an additional water line brought in for some reason, or gas for some reason. They would certainly be looking at what the cost of bringing that utility into their building is. And if they are cutting into new pavement, whatever the utility is would be factoring that into the price of someone bringing it into the building. Again, it's not meant to be onerous. We're not talking about tens of thousands of dollars, but we're talking about, you can see in a couple of examples in the bottom, we could be talking about on pavement 2 years old or less, a total fee between $1,200 and $1,500. And if it's over 2 years, but less than 5 years, we might be in the $800 to $1,000 range. So we're not punitive. We're not doing anything that can't be justified by pavement science and life expectancy of it and cost of protecting our investment. This isn't a money grab. It's saying, how do we, emergencies happen and unexpected things happen, but how do we protect those dollars that we just invested in the street? Because a year later, now somebody needs to make a cut into it.
Okay, so I guess my other question is, so we just did Lafayette Street, it's all paved. Now there's a problem with one of the person's sewer line. So they hire a contractor. Is it the contractor that's going to be charged for this fee to make sure that his patch is good and will last a long time, or is it the homeowner?
Well, in theory, if the homeowner is hiring the contractor, that fee is going to get passed along to the homeowner. So if it's the private portion that the homeowner is responsible for, then whatever contractor comes in and does the work for the homeowner is going to be contracted by the homeowner. They're going to be negotiating that price. If it's something to do with the city portion of the line, we aren't going to be charging a homeowner if we need to repair a city water line or a city sewer line. But again, the connections from the home into the street, wherever the connection occurs, are, and I think Wes is on the line and maybe he can raise his hand if I'm wrong, but from the house to the actual connection of the municipal pipe, those are the responsibilities of the homeowner.
Okay. Like I said, I didn't have a chance to go through. It's pretty involved, pretty in depth.
You went to mute.
You're muted, Bob.
Bob, you went to mute.
I'm sorry. I'd like to see this proposal sent over to the Public Works Committee to review it and probably have a public hearing on it and that kind of stuff, and instead of just passing it through tonight. I'd like to see us do a little more diligence on it, if that's okay. And as you know, I'm all for the cuts to be done properly because they haven't been done properly for years. with some of these contractors, and we end up going back and fixing them ourselves. So, but I'd just like a little more due diligence on this, and I'd like to refer it to the Public Works Committee.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think just based on your back and forth questions and probably other questions there, that makes sense to help facilitate it. So if that's the will of the council, we're happy to do that.
Thank you, Scott.
So Scott, we wouldn't need a formal vote on this. It would just be referred.
Let's take a vote to move this to the Public Works Committee.
So I'd look for someone to make a motion so we can refer this.
Mayor, I wanted to be recognized on the
Oh,
subject.
please do, Councilor
Thank you.
Lippman, yes.
I agree with the direction and support the upcoming motion. I guess the other thing that I'm interested in us doing, manager, is to look at the rules that we already have in place and see how what we're proposing here dovetails that, because I think we have some things on the books that maybe similar to parking that have been on the books and need to sort of be relifted up to look at how they integrate with what's being proposed here.
Councilor Susie?
Yes, one question. Scott, you mentioned earlier when we were first giving the outline, the word emergency. Does the emergency give them a waiver to the cost?
No, it does not. I mean, emergencies happen, but this is the cost of the repair on a 5-year-old or newer road.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Hamel?
Is it, also, if this gets referred to Public Works, I'd like to see Public Works Department produce their paperwork on, and they have it, because I used to have it, but I can't find it, on what the repair procedures and paving procedures are supposed to be for when a company comes in and digs a trench. If it's so many feet wide in a lane, they're supposed to do the yellow line to the curb. If it's bigger than that, they got to do curb to curb. There's actual procedures that are written down, and I'd like to see that as part of the documentations for the Public Works Committee.
That's what I was getting at, Councilor.
Thank you, Henry.
Okay. Thank you, councilors. So we'd be looking for a motion now to refer this proposed changes to Chapter 201-15 Street and Sidewalks, Article 2, to the Public Works Committee. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Hamel. Any further discussion? I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch,
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. Councilors, that motion passes and that document proposal will be moved along to Public Works. Thank you. Now we're moving along to item 20D, which is estimated savings by converting curbside solid waste collection from a manual to an automated system. City Manager, if you're prepared to discuss this, I'll turn it over to you once again.
I am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So actually on this one, we anticipated that there was a lot to go over. Public Works Director Wes Anderson touched on this briefly about going to an automated curbside pickup system. That's where it has the arm that comes down to the truck and picks up everything in toters. It helps those companies reduce the number of staff that they need to employ on the trucks, and also cuts down on their workers' compensation injury type of claims as well because of the automated system. So there's a lot to go on here. This actually would take a lead time of pretty much close to 2 years from us moving forward with some of the preliminary work until it goes out to bid and awarded and a contractor is able to start. Some of that is the legwork that we have to do. Some of that is contractors typically don't have extra of these automated trucks sitting around just to use because they only work in communities that have worked out a program where everybody has a toter. And if you don't have the toter, these trucks aren't going to work for that particular municipality. So you need to get the program, the better data we have about the number of users, the number of toters, all those types of things. The tighter our bid will be, the better results we think we'll get from the bid. And then ultimately, whoever's awarded the contract would need to go out and order the truck, and you've got that lead time to bring into it. So that's the background. Cutting to the chase, the motion was to move this to the Public Works Committee for discussion and recommendation back to the full council. But that's the background, and I can certainly take any questions along the way.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions before, well, maybe we can bring the motion. If there's further discussion, the questions can be posed then. So be looking for a motion to move this item to the Public Works Committee for a detailed discussion and recommendations, and also to review and recommend updates to Chapter 194 Solid Waste of the City Code, made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Felch. Any further discussion on this? Councilor Littman.
Yes, I think once Public Works deals with it, also ought to go to finance because it's considerable investment of dollars.
So if we look at this as a friendly amendment, Councilor Cheney?
Yes.
So it'll be a friendly amendment to this. So after Public Works, it goes to finance. Councilor Hamel.
Yes, question is, and I don't know, are we looking to do this in-house or still provide a contractor, Scott?
We would look to provide a contracted service for this function. We would not be bringing this in-house.
Okay. Would it make any sense where it would be one truck, one person to look at that in-house, or you still feel it's better as a contractor?
My personal take is there's probably companies that have much more expertise and knowledge in this area, and we're probably better off going that route, especially if you think about times of vacation or sick days. If we're really trying to target this, that we've got one employee on the truck handling the routes, how do you provide for that backup in an emergency situation? Appropriate number of people trained and all that type of stuff, and operating this kind of specialty apparatus. Well, yes, it's a commercial truck that folks would have a license for. You've got the mechanisms of using the arm and how you approach these toters and get them up and emptied and back down safely and that type of stuff. So I think in this situation, we would be far better off served with a contracted service.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Thank you very much, councilors. Moving right along to number 20E. Topic we're going to discuss is to ratify and approve the refinancing of several bonds as approved by the Laconia City Council Finance Committee. I'm happy to turn this over to the city manager once again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm going to talk to the next 4 items because they're all interwoven. So the council was aware that the finance committee was looking at refinancing options, and that's what's on the first item. And by refinancing, we're staying with the same lending institution. We're lowering the interest rate. We're not increasing the amount that has been borrowed, and we're not increasing the term. So this is a simple ratification of those 5 bonds that you see listed there, and that's the vote. The next 3, we're going to refer to them as being refunded as opposed to refinance. And the basic difference is they are being serviced or will be serviced in the future by a different lending institution. So that's why we're treating those 3 separate. They're going from lender A to lender B. In all of those cases for those 3, we're not increasing the dollar amount from what's owed right now on them, and we're decreasing the interest rate. It's just going to a different lender, and we have to work it that way with our legal bond counsel in order to go through this. So one is just a ratification, and the other 3 will be votes to refer them to a public hearing and a second reading at our next council meeting.
Scott, so these 3 refunded, you said the Principal amount is not increased. The rate decreases.
Decreased.
Okay. The term,
The term, I believe, either stays the same or was reduced.
It stays the same with decrease, right? It actually would not be consistent with statute to increase.
extend the term. Okay, thank you. And those three were just switching the originating lending institutions, the banks. Yeah, okay.
In some cases, if there was 16 years left on it, in more traditional numbers, it might make sense to do a 15-year bond. If you had 11 years and 3 months, you're not going to necessarily go refund in that amount. You might shorten it to 10 years. Just
Okay.
to work that each second. But in no yes, but in no situation are we increasing the length of time or increasing the dollar amount. And in all cases, we're reducing the interest rate, and that's the purpose of doing it.
Which is ultimately reducing the outlay of cash on behalf of the city.
Absolutely.
Okay, well done. Okay, so on number 20E, I'd be looking for a motion to ratify and approve the Finance Committee votes of July 13th, 2020, relating to the refinancing of the outstanding bonded debt described in such votes by reducing the interest rate on each such bond. And the new, in your document in front of you, obviously you see the 5 bonds, current interest rates, and then the new interest rates. So I'll be looking for that motion. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Felch. Any further discussion from councilors?
Just mention the savings amount.
Certainly, the fiscal impact on this will reduce general fund expenditures by $44,086. The approved fiscal year 21 budget is reflective of this change. This is recommended for ratification by the city manager and the approval of the Finance Committee and approval of the Finance Committee votes of July 13th, 2020. This report was submitted by Glenn Smith, our Finance Director. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
That's 6 votes in the affirmative and the motion passes. That's very good work, Glenn and Scott and the Finance Committee. So thank you.
Can I ask a question, Mayor?
I don't see why not.
Okay. I don't know. I might be out of order here.
We'll let you know.
Okay. Are we going through each bond individually with the 3 motions on each one, or what's?
I don't think you're out of order on this. I think we're going through the next 3
Individually.
Okay.
individually under 20F, 20G, and 20H.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
I'm all set then.
All set?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So on 20F, this is a request to schedule a public hearing on September 14, 2020 during the regular city council meeting regarding a resolution relative to authorizing bonds and notes of the city to refund the outstanding balance of a 2015 bond in the amount of $6,077,083. As indicated, historically low interest rates give the city the opportunity to refinance existing debt so as to reduce overall interest expense. I will go through this next paragraph, which indicates on March 23rd, 2015, the council authorized the borrowing of $8,105,000 to fund renovations of the Central Fire Station, improvements to the Main Street Bridge, Riverwalk improvements, and capping the Frank Bean Road landfill. Funds were borrowed at an interest rate of 3.25% through Franklin Savings Bank. Under current market conditions, the city is able to refinance the outstanding debt balance of $6,077,095 at a rate of 2.35% through Northway Bank. It's anticipated that this action will reduce city interest expense by $292,000 $656 over the remaining life of the bond, with $29,172 of savings accruing in fiscal year 21. This was submitted by Glenn Smith, our finance director, and he recommends scheduling the public hearing. The first motion is a motion to waive the reading of this resolution in its entirety and to read by title only. So made by Counselor Cheney, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Further discussion, seeing none, I call the roll. I'd ask the clerk to call the roll. I'm not calling the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. I'll be looking for a motion to move a first reading of Resolution 2020-14 relative to authorizing bonds and notes of the city to refund the outstanding balance of a 2015 bond in the amount of $6,077,093. So made by Counselor Cheney, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Discussion. Seeing no request to discuss, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Third and finally on this, we'd be looking for a motion to schedule a public hearing on September 14th, 2020 during the regular city council meeting regarding Resolution 2020-14 relative to authorizing bonds and notes of the city to refund existing debt in the amount of $6,077,093. Motion made by Counselor Hamel and seconded by Counselor Haynes. Further discussion. Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Thank you, councilors. Moving along to 20G. This is a request to schedule a public hearing on September 14th, 2020 during the regular city council meeting regarding a resolution relative to authorizing bonds and notes of the city to refund the outstanding balance of a 2018 bond in the amount of $630,000. Once again, this is driven by historically low interest rates, offering the city an opportunity to refinance existing debt and to reduce overall interest expense. For a little history, on July 9th, 2018, the council authorized the borrowing of $700,000 to fund upgrades to the police and fire radio system and police dispatch unit. Funds were borrowed at an interest rate of 2.75% through Franklin Savings Bank. Under current conditions, the city can refinance the outstanding debt balance of $630,000 at a rate of 2.1% through Northway Bank. It is anticipated that this action will reduce city interest expense by $18,428 over the remaining life of this bond, with $1,934 of savings accruing in fiscal year 21. This was submitted by Glenn Smith and he recommends the scheduling of a public hearing. I'll be looking for a motion to waive a reading of this resolution in its entirety and to read by title only. So made by Counselor Cheney, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
With 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. I'm looking for a second motion to move a first reading of Resolution 2020-15 relative to authorizing bonds and notes of the city to refund the outstanding balance of a 2018 bond in the amount of $630,000. So made by Counselor Haynes and seconded by Counselor Felch. Thank you very much. Further discussion? Seeing none at this time, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. And third and final, Be looking to move for a motion to schedule a public hearing on September 14, 2020, during the regular city council meeting regarding resolution 2020-15, relative to authorizing bonds and notes of the city to refund existing debt in the amount of $630,000. So made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Thank you, councilors. And on this packet of agenda items, we'll move along to 20I. No, 20H, excuse me, which is a request to schedule a public hearing on September 14, 2020 during the regular city council meeting regarding a resolution relative to authorizing bonds and notes of the city to refund the outstanding balance of a 2018 bond in the amount of $2 million. Again, historically low interest rates are driving this item. On July 9th, 2018, the council authorized the borrowing of $2,500,000 to fund upgrades to the police and fire radio system and police dispatch unit. Funds were borrowed at an interest rate of 3.09% through Franklin Savings Bank. Under current conditions, the city is able to refinance the outstanding debt balance of $2 million at a rate of 2.1% through Northway Bank. It is anticipated that this action will reduce city interest expense by $85,238 over the remaining life of the bond, with $9,900 of savings accruing in fiscal year 21. This report was submitted by Glenn Smith, the finance director, and he recommends scheduling a public hearing. The first motion would be looking for is a motion to waive a reading of this resolution in its entirety and to read by title only. So made by Counselor Cheney, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. The second motion is a motion to move a first reading of the resolution 2020-16 relative to authorizing bonds and notes of the city to refund the outstanding balance of a 2018 bond in the amount of $2 million. So made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Susie. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
With 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. And finally, on this agenda item, looking for a motion to schedule a public hearing on September 14, 2020 during the regular city council meeting regarding resolution 2020-16 relative to authorizing bonds and notes of the city to refund existing debt in the amount of $2 million.
Mayor.
So made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Hamel. Further discussion?
Mayor,
Yes, sir. Counselor Littman.
would you just review the savings on this one too?
Oh, the fiscal impact, it's anticipated.
He mentioned it.
I did mention, and I'm very happy to mention it again, though. I just wanted to make sure I did mention it, but it is anticipated that this action will reduce city interest expense by $85,238 over the remaining life of this bond, with $9,900 of savings accruing in fiscal year 21.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, that's quite all right. You're welcome. So I'd be looking for a motion on the third portion of this. Did I already have it?
Yeah.
You had motion and a
This is for further
second.
discussion.
Yes.
So we're in the midst of further discussion. Council Littman, you threw me off. I was in my groove. I got bumped off. So seeing no requests for further discussion, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
With 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Thank you very much for your patience on this,
Mayor,
council. Yes, Councilor Hamel.
I'd just like to thank Finance Director Glenn Smith on his work on doing this, negotiating terms and interest rates with the different banks. And if that's totaled up, if I'm correct, and Glenn can correct me if not, but it's over $500,000 that was saved by renegotiating the terms and the interest rates on these bonds that we had out.
Thank you, Councilor Hamel. And that is, I think all of us would agree with you. And I'm glad you didn't let this moment slip by without an expression of appreciation to Glenn Smith, because you're right, it really is a substantial saving. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councilor Hamel again. So moving on to 20I, which is a request to schedule a public hearing on September 14, 2020 during the regular city council meeting regarding a proposed application to the Community Development Finance Authority for up to $500,000 in community development block grant COVID-19 monies to fund requests from up to 10 public service providers. The Community Development Block Grant funds are available to municipalities through the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority. $3.7 million is provided for public service programs to support necessary community services related to the purpose of the prevention of, preparation for, and response to COVID-19. Activities must serve primarily low and moderate income persons. Individual grant applications are capped at $500,000. The city is currently working with a coalition of Laconia-based social service agencies to develop a prioritized set of programs targeted to providing necessary services to Laconia residents impacted by the pandemic. This report was submitted by Glenn Smith, Welfare Director. City Manager Myers, would you like to weigh in for a little edification on this item?
I will weigh in at the 10,000 foot level and then have Glenn get into the weeds just briefly with you. But as is with the COVID pandemic, I'll refer to it as there are numerous programs coming from the federal and state level, and a lot of them are silos and they can be used for specific activities. So we've got FEMA money, we've got Gopher money, we've got some revenue reimbursement on our ambulance service. This particular one through the Community Development Block Grant Program is COVID monies, and through CDBG funds are targeted to support low and moderate income people. So what Glenn has done, and he can get into the details, is worked with a number of local service providers, social service agencies, to help identify what the need might be when some of these current dollars that people are getting for unemployment or the stay of being evicted from properties and those types of things might run out. We're looking forward as to what the needs might be for that segment of our community. And Glenn has done a great job pulling people together. As you had read, Mr. Mayor, it's up to 10 public service providers. We've had more interest than that, and the dollars requested are exceeding the 500,000. So we'll be honing in crafting. But if Glenn, you can speak to some of the types of services that collectively the groups you're working with have prioritized and targeted, that would be great.
Yes, thank you. Be happy to do that. Myself and Kathy Raymond, our welfare technician, cast a pretty wide net in trying to get these funds going into our community. The groups that have responded so far and we're actively working with provide a wide range of services. I'll just list a few: is the Partnership for Public Health, Belknap House, Navigating Recovery, the Community Action Program, Isaiah Cafe, Boys and Girls Club, St. Vincent de Paul, the Child Advocacy Center. I'll kind of stop there, but it kind of gives you an idea of the broad range of child services, health services, housing services that will be assisted through this grant program. We're currently working with those issues and with our CDBG folks to kind of pull this all together into a final version, a final application that we'll have, of course, in time for your September 14th meeting.
Oh, terrific. Yes, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, and I really need to stress again, the team effort on this, because these programs come out, sometimes there's a short window of opportunity. We've got it from Chief Biotti in fire and our emergency management director, to a Department of Justice grant that Chief Canfield's working on, to this type of application or announcement that funds are available. But this one just came out a couple of weeks ago and had a very short window to be able to get into to work to accept. The application date is by the end of September. And actually with Councilor Lippman in his professional world, he identified this and has sent me an email and said, you know, this just came out recently. Are we on top of it? And I was pleased to be able to say, you know, Glenn's already got a meeting going and we're doing this. But it's great because these things come out and, you know, none of this is necessarily in anybody's wheelhouse about, okay, how are we responding to a pandemic and how that impacts low and moderate income people when certain programs may run out. I mean, the next one you're going to see is on Help America Vote Act and what we've got to do different in the elections this year. So all of these things are there. Ultimately, Glenn's responsible for all the finances of them, but it really takes that team to identify how these programs are working, how we can best take and make advantage of funds that are available to support what's needed in our community. And we just throw this in other duties as maybe assigned because nobody was planning on this in our day-to-day lives up until late March. And then they've come fast and furious. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention some of our managers listservs, the GFOA listservs, the various groups we belong to are great resources. And then the New Hampshire Municipal Association has done a fantastic job of identifying this and sometimes clarifying the language, which can be challenging, and holding calls, and the Attorney General's office is holding calls, Homeland Security holding calls. There are a lot of resources that we're all a part of, but this really is uncharted territory, and everyone's really stepping up and doing great things with it.
We, particularly in times of crisis like it's really been over the past 6 or 7 months, you begin to realize what a great team there is in this city at so many different levels. So nice work once again. So I'd be looking for, does anyone else have any questions about what Glenn and Scott just shared with us? Okay. So I'd be looking right now is a motion to schedule a public hearing on September 14th, 2020 during the regular city council meeting regarding a proposed application to the Community Development Finance Authority for up to $500,000 in community development block grant COVID-19 funding requests from up to 10 public service providers. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Felch. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
You're muted.
Counselor Susie, you're muted. There you go.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
With 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Moving on to item 20J, which is a request to accept funds provided by the state and federal government for election-related expenses required in response to the COVID-19 public health emergency. Funds to be accepted under the provisions of RSA 21-P:43. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, CARES Act, includes a $400 million in new Help America Vote emergency funds. These funds are available to states to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19 public health emergency for the 2020 federal election cycle. The state of New Hampshire has received funding under this grant and will subgrant $3 million to municipalities to assist in funding costs associated with processing absentee ballots. Funding is allocated to municipalities based on their proportional share of total ballots cast in 2016. Funding available to the city of Laconia totals $34,633.43. RSA 21-P:43 authorizes municipalities to accept offers from any federal agency, either directly or through the state of New Hampshire, of equipment, supplies, materials, or funds by way of gift, grant, or loan for the purposes of emergency management. Such acceptance is subject to the terms of the offer and the rules and regulations of the agency making the offer. Acceptance of these funds requires a local match of $6,926.69, which is available in the fiscal year 21 approved budget. This was submitted by City Manager Scott Myers, and it recommends that the city manager be authorized to apply for and accept funds provided under the Help America Vote Act as outlined above. So I'd be looking for a motion to accept federal Help America Vote Act funds, HAVA funds, in the amount of $34,633.43 under the provisions of RSA 21-P:43. So made by Councilor Cheney. Thank you, Councilor Cheney. Seconded by Councilor Felch. Thank you. Further discussion on the HAVA funds available to the city. Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. We have nothing under unfinished business, and I would move on to item number 22, which is council comments. Councilor Felch.
Yeah, I just want to, we've got a couple things that are moving forward to committees. Just wanted to know if we wanted to schedule some meetings.
So the Public Works Committee got 2 items referred to it tonight, and that is, I believe, Councilor Haynes as the chair, and then Councilors Felch and Susie. So that's why the other councilors are smiling right now. They didn't get any committee assignments tonight.
And I will also say I will be out of town, but I can meet at the next meeting. I can be on Zoom if that's the case, or whatever we need to do.
And we do have, there's a 5th Monday in August, so we do have 3 weeks between tonight and our next regularly scheduled meeting as well.
Terrific. Any other council comments? Again, thank you very much for your work tonight, councilors and staff. And I will adjourn City Council meeting of August 24th, 2020 at 9:16 p.m.